Welcome back on deynonmod. Today I want to propose you a video about the unboxing review about the White Dwarf issue 518 released by the Games Workshop for November 2025. And I'm quite curious about this White Dwarf because usually November it's one of the best because it has a lot of contents, answers and so on. Moreover, this is about the 50 years of the Games Workshop. I'm quite curious because we've seen that the ones about the 10 years of Age of Sigmar was not so great in the meaning of Age of Sigmar related. Still, I'm really quite interested. So we can see from here part of what we see inside. So something related about Talisman that I'm quite curious what to be about. Here we can see that there will be a game for Age of Sigmar about racing with the chariots. And I'm quite interested because we've seen something similar related about Warhammer 40k for the orcs, the vehicles and so on. So quite nice. And here other things, so it will be really quite interesting about this Bolgan and about the Helsmiths of Hashut. Remember that about the Helsmiths I made the review about the Battletome. If you're interested about, you can find the link in the description. So it's really quite intriguing. As usual, what I lament and I don't like, so I'm a grumbling Dwarves, I know, but it's this paper that it's done to put. Sincerely, I prefer something more rigid and that it will a bit less, because even simply having this from the store, it's a bit ruined. Okay, so it's a bit of pity because I like to keep also these things. So here we can see also the contents that will be inside, but we see them much better later. So it will be really quite nice. So let's open this, give a sight about the event inserts that there are, and then the White Dwarf itself. So now let's see about the gifts that are inside. So here we have this that it's about Warhammer Tacticus, that it's an app for iOS and Android, where there is this Sanguinary Priest, so for the Blood Angels, that it's named that you can have. Obviously under here there is the code that I don't intend to share with you, but okay, even if I don't play, maybe in the future we see. Anyway, remember that I can't share this or make a sort of giveaway because the rules in my country. Then we have this that it's about Talisman, and okay, not bad. Sincerely, it's a way to have a different option for this way to play. So I think that it could be quite interesting. Sincerely, I think that I'll use only this part because I think that it's quite interesting to have as a bookmarker. It's a bit thick anyway, so maybe simply as a decoration because it's quite nice. Still not bad at all anyway. And then have the White Dwarf, and we see quite now. So now it's time for the review about the White Dwarf itself. So we can start from the quote that it's about the 50 years of the Games Workshop, and the two main ones that are related about now, so the Age of Sigmar part and the Space Marines. So we can see the arrival, and it's really quite interesting about. So we can start to see about the content side. Here you can find these parts that are related about the racing for Age of Sigmar. So it's quite interesting because we've seen in the past the part about Warhammer 40k with the orcs and so on. Here it's interesting to see a more detailed one. Sincerely, I prefer this because it's much more, I can say, developed. It's nice. Here we have also the front arc and so on, and these that are the usual ones. Okay, are classical for the Warhammer Fantasy and arrived also here again. Here we have the two missions that are related as usual. So here we have one that it's for Warhammer 40k and here for Age of Sigmar. Usually these are related about something that it's from the old one. So for example, here comes from the 2018, and it's quite nice because it always reminds you that you can have simply recalling of something that has been yet published, and so having again useful. So you can adapt, and I quite like. And here we have the alternative cover that it's the same that we've seen for this White Dwarf, but a little about the special version, making the subscription to the White Dwarf itself. You can save money and have artistic works that are amazing ones. So eventually it's an option. So it's quite nice. So we can move to the beginning and start to see about the contents itself. Here we have the introduction. Here the part about the contents, that it's really quite nice, and we can find that there has been quite a lot of things. About this White Dwarf, we see that it's peculiar because it's more related about here, the 50 years of the Games Workshop. So a sort of story telling about what happened in these 50 years, and I quite like because I know a bit about the story, but it's more intriguing to see about the Tolkien, and also some information could be quite nice, and moreover for the ones that started quite later could be quite a good summary about everything. So here we can see some of the setbox that started with, so it's quite nice because we can start to see about how much has been produced along the years, and some of things I yet been quite close about, because for example I started with the 6th edition of Warhammer Fantasy, but with the 4th edition of Warhammer 40k. Still, I started with the setbox of 2nd edition, so it's really quite interesting. And here we can see a lot of products, and here we have also a sort of understanding better about what happened, because we had talking about the ones that created and about developed the game social step. So about the developing in an apartment, then moving for creating the stores and so on, creating the White Dwarf, the story, the dates of the White Dwarf itself, and the first edition of the same Warhammer Fantasy here. So it's really quite interesting, moreover because you can see here how it's been divided in different eras, so different developing, and I quite like, maybe I would have added a bit more, because in my opinion there are more milestones about this developing, but it's really quite amazing because you can understand much better about whatever happened. For example, I never played about the 4th edition, still it's quite nice to see a bit more about these things, and the stores has changed quite a lot along the time, and I'm quite in love for this, for example, because as I said, I started with the 4th edition of Warhammer 40k for the Warhammer 40k part, because I started with Warhammer Fantasy, but this I perfectly know because it's the box that I bought because it was on offer, and so to have my first Space Marines anyway had this one, so it's quite a pleasant remember about, so it's memory, it's quite intriguing. And so here the Warhammer Wood, how it's been developed, I really quite appreciate. And here developing of the miniatures themselves, so that they started, as we've seen about the history, from the part about being from other trademarks, and the game was a way to reselling or create miniatures for them. Instead, then started to create their own games. And here we can see a bit, moreover, the part about here, the basing, that has been quite a good gap, really a jump, because they started from having the base that it was part of the miniature to be aside, so that you can create separately, and it was a really quite a good improvement, so it's quite intriguing. Well, you can find here that were hexagonal bases instead of the round one, so a lot of things here. Really, I suggest you to read about this, so I'm really making a short because there's been quite a lot and it's really quite intriguing. For example, here we can see about the developing, and moreover here it's interesting to see the part about the older miniatures and the new ones. Some example, for example, this Black Mane and Tech is shown, and here for example you can see the scale of the Space Marines themselves change since the 2nd edition to the now actual one, so it's really quite intriguing. And then about the games, and for example here I can find something that I haven't not known, because for example I didn't know about these games that were for children, and it was really quite intriguing. Moreover, if you think about that, there's been also something about Just Red. Okay, still we can find how much has changed the things, and here for example we can find a milestone for the White Dwarf about including the background in some massive part, some White Dwarf, so quite nice, and I quite appreciate sincerely. And then some other intriguing part, for example here we had Dreadfleet, that sincerely I never appreciate too much, but when they took that it was 2011 when it's been released, and simply I skipped because I would have preferred something more sized up as option. It's quite intriguing because it was quite appreciated at the time, so it's strange to see that there's not been any reprint about this. Instead here we have now with the Age of Sigmar, so it's really quite intriguing. Moreover, here we can have a really quite complete map about Axis, so wow, it's interesting. it has quite a lot of surprises, this White Dwarf, in a lot of different ways, and really there are tons of information that I'm bypassing, but I suggest you to read about this. And I've had the part about the artworks, because we have seen about the part about the background, the part about the miniatures, and the background is also a great part if you add to it the part about the images, because they are evocative, they are greatly bring you a lot of immersive part, and so you can find some of the other ones. I made also a video about one of these collector of the images. If you want, I leave you the link in the description, of that it was about Gallagher, and really I think that it is really quite intriguing to see these images that recall you quite a lot, and you can see how much has been improved, developed along the years, the images, the filmed. Really, it's quite intriguing what has been done, even in the artwork part. It's quite interesting. And have also the part about the digital world, because Games Workshop has lent out a lot of its brand to create a lot of video games that made quite a lot of intriguing ways. For example, here it's the last one, actual one when it's listed, it's that it's about Space Marine 2. So really quite a lot of things that are really quite interesting. Here we have also the part about the mobile part. For example, you have Tacticus, that remember that you have also the card about the Sanguinary Priest inside here, if you want. And then you have the part about celebrating a bit of the community, obviously, because it's part of the success of the Games Workshop, and some, I can say, hope for the next 50 years. It's really quite interesting, and I quite appreciate it. And then we can start with the usual White Dwarf. So we can find about the main list of the reader to the team of the White Dwarf. And here, as usual, I suggest you to see, to have an idea about maybe some painting, some modifying, some basing. It could be quite intriguing, or eventually some story, because we've seen that sometimes it's really quite interesting also to read the parts. And really, there are a lot of things that you can use this as inspirational, and it's quite intriguing for this, because it's really quite amazing. Think about this Teclis and Tyrion, for example. It's really quite having a lot of nice boots. Then we can see about the Bolgan, that is the Requiem, my favorite translation, okay, and the part about the history of it and the developing in different armies and so on, that could be quite interesting to read. So it's an intriguing article, this, sincerely, because it gives you a lot of ideas. Okay, they can give you a lot of how much this same army, this same weapon, it's been quite modified, quite personalized and so on. I think that it developed as much as Warhammer 40k itself, so I quite appreciate it. And you can see in a different forms, and it's really quite amazing, and it's one of the most intriguing and basic weapon, but at the same time one of the most important part for Warhammer 40k. And then this, it's really quite interesting, because it's a way to play with something that it recall the rules for the old editions with the new 10th edition. So it's something that is quite nice. So we can create a sort of skirmish part, short battles, okay, that could be quite nice. For example, here we're using the second edition, so using the models that come from that edition, or at least the equivalent one, and adding these rules to recall the vibe. And it's quite intriguing, maybe it's interesting to try, it's quite nice. Here we have for the third edition too, and then we have for the fourth edition, so it's quite intriguing, sincerely, okay. For example, I like, because I start, as I said, with the fourth edition about Warhammer 40k, for 40k, so it's really quite intriguing one. And I have also some specific mission to recreate, so with the second edition one, then the third and the fourth, so it's really quite intriguing. It's really quite a different thing to create. And then a Battlereport that it's a recalling about what has been the fall of Cadia, so that it recall different steps along the time for this developing of Warhammer 40k background, and so creating something quite intriguing, making the Astra Militarum, or Imperial Guard at the time, against the Chaos. So it's really quite an amazing one. There are a lot of things that could be nice, and as usual, I suggest you, if you're interested about Warhammer 40k, it's a really great reading. Otherwise, it's something that you could use to have a refer about how it can be played, the game itself. So it's really quite nice. Or see about, for example, the Dwarves or dioramas that could be used, or eventually the part about the sharing feature for the tabletop itself, because it could be an inspirational way to create, for example, these parts could be really quite nice, sincerely. So it's quite intriguing. Moreover, it's not so often that you see some Warhound on the battlefield, so it's always quite nice. And really, it's something that it's pleasure, in my opinion, to see and read. For example, about this, you can eventually use that Titanicus once or Legion Imperialis to create such scenery. You don't need, for example, the real big ones, and you can have quite a lot of ideas to develop your own ways. So I quite like, sincerely. And then we move about Age of Sigmar, and here I quite like, because this technically it's official but unofficial, because here we can play the race. The only thing that in mind about playing with this type of way, it's the base itself. So you have two different type of bases that you can use, and I think that it's really quite amazing, because you have about the 105 per 70 millimeter base, or the 120 for 92 millimeter base. So any model that it's in these bases, it's welcome. And really, I want to try almost this thing, because it's really quite intriguing, and it's full, complete. Sincerely, the one about Warhammer 40k that has been released in the past in the same year, it was not so complete. It was a bit messy, in my opinion. Okay, it was about orcs, so it was okay that it was messy. Still, this it's really quite intriguing one, and it's complete. It's really a full game, and quite fun, I think. So it's really quite intriguing. And there are also some artwork that are nice. You have also specific battle plan that you can use to have a sort of race around. So it's really quite nice, in my opinion. And then a bit of background about the chariots themselves. So it's really quite nice to create and have a better understanding about some of them, and also some little stories, a little background. It's the images. It's quite nice. It's intriguing in its own way. So it's welcome. And then we have about the Helsmiths of Hashut, because has been released the previous month the part about the new Battletome for Age of Sigmar, that it's a new army for the Chaos, that it's the Helsmiths of Hashut or the Chaos Dwarves. Remember that I made the unbox about this Battletome, so if you're interested, in the description. And it's really quite nice. Moreover, because you can see here some of the old models compared to the new ones, so you can see really how much the change even remain the same. It's quite intriguing, really. It's really quite nice, because we've seen a lot of things that has changed and move up, and sincerely, it's okay, a spot, but it's a spot that I appreciate, because it's about talking about the Miniatures, it's talking about the story, it's talking about an army that has been in the dark quite long. So it's really quite nice, and really I love such type of things, because they can give you quite a lot of information enjoying such models, because I think that they are really quite amazing one, and I love them. I'll not start with an army about the Helsmiths of Hashut, but still they are really nice. Here, as usual, a bit of painting, and really here it can be useful for paint. Really, also other things, because you can paint about the armors and so on. So it has quite a lot of potential, also this one. And then a bit of celebration also about the Black Rebels. So see a bit of novice, okay, has something that it's really a good one. For example, here Gothic and Felix, that it's old chronicle for Warhammer Fantasy. Here are the thing Valdor, here Gothic itself, that it's in Age of Sigmar, this one, the Death Corp of Krieg. So here we can see some of the publication. Some famous, some new, some a bit old and reprinted. So it's really quite nice. For example, here we have this that it's, for example, that it's Chapa skin that I started to love. I noticed it strangely on videos on YouTube and for songs itself, and I started to be interesting, and I'm thinking about buying a lot of its background eventually. the Infinite and the Divine, that it's amazing. Okay, remember that this has been translated also in Italian in the case, and you have a lot of things, so it's really quite nice, because you can see a lot of the option. Here we can see these parts are for the most part new ones. For example, here the Krieg one, it's been released quite recently. Also the part about Elements Council, the Follow Cardia, and Morven. Harwich, it's a bit older, for example, and Gattuskata, it has some years now on it, so it's really quite interesting, because you can see a lot of different things and inspiration about, and sincerely I love, because I like what has been brought for the Black Library. In my opinion, it's something that it's really a way to develop the background of the Warhammer Fantasy, Age of Sigmar, or Warhammer 40k stuff, because they give you the space to have the story developing, and I love in such a way, so it's really quite nice. Here we have also the part about Age of Sigmar, so here we have for the part that has been released recently, so it's quite intriguing. Okay, remember that here you can read whatever you want. It's up to you decide, because the most part of the authors write for both Warhammer 40k and Age of Sigmar, and you can have quite a lot of fun. Also about Horus Heresy, remember that for example I brought you that I bought the Siege of Terra, the Death and the Dead, the book 8, and it was amazing. But for example for the Siege of Terra, here you have the other 7 books that I'm really hoping that in English that there will be the omnibus about, so to say, a bit of money. Still are all things that it's amazing to read, and really a lot. For example, only for Horus Heresy there are at least 58 books for the main part of the story. Then you had the Siege of Terra, then you had the Primarchs, then you had other options too, so a lot of things. And then we have the part about the Old World, that it was one of the main part eventually. And sincerely I hope that they will continue to republish about the books for the Old World, because have a lot of them still. Some of them I not have been able to find out when they've been released or buy, so it's quite nice to see them reprinted, even if I hope not in that awful blue, light blue that it was. I like when there is a cover that it has also a design. Okay, still the most important part it has been that they are going to be step by step reprinted, so it's quite nice. So okay, and moreover in Italian they are starting to, from Panini, being released all these romances, all these books and so on, so quite intriguing part. Then we move on. You can find the part about the satellite uplink. Here it's a bit peculiar, because it's a part about fans. Okay, it's a sort of second part of the part of the mailing reader from the readers, and here it's about seeing old models brought, so we can find from all the eras the models we can have a recalling about, and sincerely I quite appreciate, because you can see really some old models. For example, some of these you maybe even not ever know that has been released. It's really quite nice. And here we had the Inquisitor. It was an amazing game with really big scale, 54mm one about that. It's a pity that they have not continued, but they were a bit expensive. It was a bit peculiar, but I appreciate it when it has been released. Blood Bowl and so on. So there has been quite a lot of things here that can be used as a reference. Here the insert that we have seen, and really it's something that it's really quite amazing. And moreover, we have the back that it's with a bit of mess, so we can see that it's related about not what it will be out, but the Black Legion against the Asta Militarum. So it's recalling a bit what it was about in this Battlereport, but in another way. So it's nice. It's always an amazing image to see. So to say about such White Dwarf, since I find it really quite intriguing. It's a peculiar one. It's a standalone White Dwarf in my opinion, because if you go to see about a November White Dwarf, it's quite downside, because we have seen in the past that has much more and more intriguing inserts inside. Instead here, okay, it's not so rich in my opinion, so it's a bit down. But at the same time, if you go to see about the content side, it's a special one, because it's a 50-year White Dwarf, so Here it's interesting because we can find that inside here there's been the story of the Games Workshop. Okay, it's not complete, there's been a lot more to say eventually, and in this way, sincerely I would have preferred a whole White Dwarf with all the events much more detailed. Sincerely, it will be a sort of White Dwarf history of the Games Workshop itself, and I would have liked personally. At the same time, there's been quite a lot of summary and a lot of details that I myself haven't known about, so it's intriguing. There are a lot of information that I appreciate, and if you go to see also about the other articles, we can find a lot that can be about Warhammer 40k, Age of Sigmar, nice, and about the games, there is the part about how to play for the old times for Warhammer 40k and the Chariot race, okay, we can call Chariot race for the Age of Sigmar, that I think that it's quite nice and really not bad. About the break library for these ones, I hope that it will be only for these ones. The part about a sort of spot about the different releases and make know about what has been going to be published and so on for this reality, because it is really a massive gain for everyone that love the lore for the Games Workshops. That can be Warhammer Fantasy, Horus Heresy, Warhammer 40k, Age of Sigmar, doesn't mind. It's a way to understand how big it is, what it can gain, and really quite nice. And I hope that they start again with making see the part about the publishing of real novels, because it's something that I always appreciate to read. So this it's a stuff that it's a bit peculiar but nice. So I think that it has quite a lot of potential. Maybe not the best, but it's by itself. So it's a medium one as grade, and at the same time it's something that it's quite nice. Moreover, the part about the chariot rate, surely it's better than the one about Warhammer 40k. So it's quite intriguing, and I'm quite curious about what you thought about this White Dwarf. Are you interested to buy and know better about what I can say a bit avoided, okay, so that I can sit with you to buy it and read about this White Dwarf, because there's been quite intriguing parts that could be quite intriguing to read and enjoy by yourself anyway, and really a lot of models from the old times that give you quite a lot of memory if you liked, or you can appreciate much better the new ones because you can understand how much it's been developed, the miniatures and so on. So it has been really quite a great travel in the time, okay, and you can see how it's been developed everything. And sincerely, I quite like what we have now, because I liked part of what we're seeing in this White Dwarf, and sincerely, I think that I perceived this developing and the efforts that has been brought, so quite nice. Okay, there are anyway sometimes that I still go to say that Games Workshop could be better, for sure, that can be always better. At the same time, it's something that it's maybe my memory might been a sort of fun, okay, a critic fun, but it's nice. And I'm quite curious about how you perceived all the history, about you perceived this White Dwarf and so on. It's quite intriguing. Write in the comment anyway. So from deynonmod it's everything. I invite you to subscribe to the channel, to ring the bell so to receive notification about new video, to comment under here about this video, or if you want to suggest me new videos. So I hope to see you again to the next time.